Filbert. Or, no, not Filbert. Let's do something. Just want to knock that white down a little bit, and there we go. Suppose I could use a larger brush for this. Let's do that. Even at this stage, I like to have just some interesting marks happening. This music's a little too loud for me. Kick you way back. Way back. You know, certain parts of the process, I'm okay just getting them done faster. But even with this part, I don't want to, as simple as it is, still don't want to rush it too much. Ooh, that's a little too hot. By the way, I'm working with a very limited palette this morning. I'll get into that in just a sec. It's a little too dark. Too dark. It's fine. It's fine. Normally I would probably want to lighten this up, but the reference is actually very dark, so just kind of why I chose it. So I don't mind this going a little darker. Not a big deal. All right, we'll let this do its thing for a couple minutes. Yes, yeah, this is oil paint. This is just the underpainting. I always start from a mid-ground, so I always kick that white down. And then it kind of gives me room to play from both sides, right? Camera, focus, hello, hello, hello. So from the mid-ground, I can go darker and lighter, which I just prefer that. If I start painting on white, then I have to kick everything down, and then it's not the worst thing in the world. It's similar to watercolor in that regard, I guess, if I work that way. But with oils, I prefer this. So with most opaque mediums, I prefer starting from a mid-ground. So even with gouache, I like starting from a mid-ground. And really quick, I'll show you the palette. This is transparent oxide red lake. This is transparent yellow iron oxide. This is Indian yellow, but I'm not going to be using it. It just happened to be on the palette already. You can ignore it, because I will. This is a titanium zinc white, and then this is olive green, and then some walnut oil gel. So I'm really just using these 4 colors today. A very limited palette, mostly like not worrying about color matching so much as just worrying about value and temperature. And that's kind of all I'm focusing on today. Allows me to get some stuff done quicker, and without having to focus on full color. All right, let's get into this. Where to start? We'll start with just a little bit of a block in. Nothing crazy. Oh, no, not a secret. It's actually just a screen grab from Outlander of Monsieur Raymond. He's just got such a great face. They chose an awesome actor whose name I'm totally blanking on. But yeah, he just has a fantastic face, and this shot just had really cool lighting, super limited value range, which is just kind of fun to play with. So yeah, no big secret. Let's get a bit more pigment. Oh, nice. I just got back from Scotland on Saturday, and I absolutely loved it. Man, the Highlands are just beautiful. You know, as someone that grew up in the country, that was going to be way too big. As someone that grew up in the country, it was so nice to kind of go to a place like that. Because because I live just outside of Los Angeles now, and not very pretty country. So it was, yeah. I already want to go back. I'm already kind of thinking about planning a trip back there for next year. It really is. I mean, there's just like, even when you're just talking about the hills with the heather, and especially with the heather being in bloom right now, I don't know. There's just a wildness to the countryside that you don't see often, and I don't know, it's pretty amazing. All right, let's make sure we get. I think I'm zoomed in on the reference a little too much. There. Yeah, man, the heather is so pretty. I think I'll start really just by locking in some masses, some darks. I'll probably oscillate. I'll get into some little bit of line work, so to speak, but mostly just with structure in mind, I guess. He's got one of those awesome wigs. It's funny because in the books, there's certain things she does much better. Mostly when she gets into the historical stuff, it's nice to kind of spend some time with that. But in the show, like, man, they did some amazing casting for some of the characters that make some of them much more compelling in the show than they are in the books. Not always, not all of them, but his character in particular, I just thought he was amazing in the show. But in the books, I didn't care too much. Stuff might be a little too thin for this. I probably should have not used as much medium in it, but that's okay. We can make it work. Not that concerned at this stage with getting perfect consistency. And it might actually be the brush. I think this brush is kind of pulling paint off. So let's swap brushes. Where's the other one that I was going to use? Here we go. Let's go a little harder on these. I think I'll go more for massing in essentially the midtones and darks, more or less, as one shape. Man, I have not... I don't know when the last time I did a live stream was. I feel like it's been... Actually, I could probably tell. Let's see. On Discord, when was the last one? So, a little over a year ago. June 25th, 2022. Crazy. Been a minute. I've been thinking about it for a while. It gets a little tricky with the day job, but lately, kind of for the last couple months, I guess, I started waking up early again so that I could get some painting time in, and I was kind of focused on getting used to that, which wasn't hard. I'm a morning person anyway. And then I figured once I got used to it, that maybe I'd do some morning streaming before work. So that's what we're doing today. So yeah, hopefully I can do more of it. I don't want to like set up a schedule right now or anything. I don't want it to feel like work, you know? I want to focus on painting because I don't have a ton of time to paint for myself. And I don't get to do a lot of oil painting for work. It's mostly digital, which is fine. Makes sense, right? It's advertising. We don't have time for oils. But traditional paint is what makes me very happy, so gotta squeeze it in. Gotta get the time in. But the reality is, I also really enjoy streaming, you know? Especially, initially I was like, oh, could I make a job out of it, you know? Like, could I make a career out of it? Would I be able to make enough money doing it to, you know, just focus on that? And it's like, not really. Not with the stuff that I like to stream and the way that I like to stream. Tends to be a little more, you know, kind of art education based, and obviously to make a career out of streaming, it has to be another job, right? You got to put the time in, which is hard to do when I have a job that I already really like that pays me well. So yeah, that would be fun. The thing is, I'm not terribly good at landscape painting. I enjoy doing it, but it's not really my skill set beyond the fact that I can paint. But landscape painting is a little, you know, it's different. I'm mostly figurative, and but it would be fun to move to the Highlands. Do you live there, or are you just there to write, or are you just on vacation and you happen to be writing? Get into some accents here for sure. Kind of solidify his likeness. Oh, right on. Is that the big national park, like between Inverness and Edinburgh? We had nice, nice. I didn't get a chance to go through there, but my girlfriend and I had taken the train from Inverness to Edinburgh, so we kind of skirted along the edge of it. But we had gotten the chance to hike through Glen Affric, which was amazing. Yeah, I was able to actually do a little bit of watercolor over there because it's easier to travel with. So I opted for just sticking with watercolor, knowing that I wouldn't really have that much time to paint. So I didn't want to deal with the whole oil setup. Plus, then you have to deal with like going through the airport and security, and they just always have questions when you have any oil paints, and even though they should know that they are safe to travel with. Alright, something in his proportions is weird. I think it's because the top of his head isn't big enough. Yeah, where I'll have to which book were they in? I'll have to pull out the sketchbook that they're in. Alright, let's get some get some dark accents in here. Because I think that's why I'm feeling like his likeness is off. I think some of the shapes are just a little misplaced. I don't really like to get into super specific details at this stage, but I think a little bit. But getting some of the accented darks is not a bad thing. It helps solidify the structure, right? I actually feel like this whole thing's gonna have to go darker anyway. So getting some more darks in there, not a bad thing. I'll probably darken the background at some point here, because there's some lights that are not gonna pop without that. Oh yeah, they're actually on. I posted them on Instagram. If so you'll see a couple of watercolors. I had painted a couple of buildings, one in Inverness and one in Edinburgh, and my girlfriend during high tea or afternoon tea. This guy's such an interesting mouth shape. Now we're getting there, little by little. It's true. It's true. It's like I'm from wine country up in Northern California, and it's a similar thing. Like if you just paint some vineyards, you'll probably be able to sell to the tourists. I mean, the reality is they wouldn't even have to be that good. But if they are good, even better. Landscape painting is something that I think would be, I don't know, something I'd like to get better at. Like, I don't really have an interest in doing it as any kind of a focus. So like I said, I'm a people painter for the most part. Like that's what I really enjoy. But I love the act of landscape painting, even if I'm not great at it. I don't know. Just that kind of observation of light in open spaces is really interesting and fun. Oh no, believe me, I know the game. I know the game. But yeah, I really would love to plan another trip there that's mostly focused around painting. Plus, I didn't really get a chance to go out to the West Coast, which I'd really love to do. And I just think doing some painting would be a great way to appreciate the beauty of that landscape. Plus, I'm a better painter now than I was the last time I tried plein air painting in oils, so I know I could get something at least decent. Let's get some background in there because I think that's really gonna change the lighting scenario on him. By background, I mean abstract darks. It's too tall, maybe. Let's see. Not in this particular one. This was an indoor shot. They're in Monsieur Raymond's apothecary, I believe, in this one. But I did take some screen grabs of some environment stuff as well. That would be fun to do studies from. kind of focus on silhouette a little bit here, and then I can kind of choose where I want to lose some edges, because I definitely want to lose some edges. So something in his proportions just a little off. So I'm getting it. Oh no. That's why. I'm a big fan of carving out edges. There's kind of no other way to get a really clean like sharp edge in oils. Like, you're usually better off cutting in from the negative space rather than trying to paint the positive shape up to a sharp edge. And it's fun and satisfying. Too red there? That's okay. It's interesting. I said I wasn't really focused on, color matching, more on value and just general temperature. But looking at this image with this super limited palette, I could probably actually match the colors that are here, because it is a very limited palette shot. I had almost decided to stream from Twitch, but I was like, I'm kind of over. Not that into Twitch these days. So YouTube seemed like the better option. Of course, I had to quickly figure that one out again. I swear, I feel like it used to be a little quicker and simpler. But maybe I'm misremembering. It's a little more set up than I remember there being. But I think before, when I used to stream to YouTube, I was using Restream, because I would stream to both Twitch and YouTube. So maybe, I don't know. Whatever. Thank you. I'm glad to be here. When I woke up this morning, there was a brief moment where I was like, well, do I want to stream or do I want to just record it? I was like, no, you know what? Start streaming before you overthink it. And I like the interaction in streaming. I like being able to kind of converse to a degree. Ooh, his curls are... This one is too high. Yeah, I'm a big fan of not overthinking things and just getting to it before I talk myself out of something that I shouldn't talk myself out of. Just because it's scary. It's not scary. I've done enough streaming that it doesn't make me nervous. And I have some bigger paintings I'm working on as well, which I think would be really fun to stream parts of. I think they would be okay. At least one of them would be on YouTube. I'd have to probably age restrict the stream because there is nudity, but it's not like, it's not graphic or explicit. It's not like sexual nudity or anything like that. It's just dryads like chilling, doing dryad things. I think that was one of the things I loved most in Scotland, in the Highlands, was that you can understand why I guess folklore it's kind of more alive there. You just can see it in the landscape, and it's amazing. And I love that stuff. I grew up on a lot of mythology and folklore, and so I don't know, any cultures to me that still embrace a lot of that are very, very compelling, and I want to spend time with them. Some of this out over here. Yeah, I mean, luckily my live streams will all, stay up on my YouTube channel, so you can always go back and check them out. Plus, I also record them as I'm streaming. Which is nice because I'm recording in 4K, so it might be something where I upload the 4K version of something. Who knows? Once you get into all that stuff, it demands so much time. Most of the time I would rather just paint. But I also love sharing art and process, so I haven't really touched that transparent yellow iron oxide much. I'll probably get into some of that soon here. Let's just see how much we can do with this slightly larger brush. It's pretty versatile, so I think I can do quite a bit. I think I only dipped into it briefly when I was laying down the mid-ground. Oops, I should probably mix that. It's kind of nice though. Get some darks in there. Starts to I definitely need to kick those lights down. I mean, nothing in his face, with the exception of a tiny little specular in his eye. Nothing in his face is that light. So we'll have to get into that. And that is where I will break out. that transparent yellow iron oxide. Because I figure if I can color match to a degree, just with my limited palette, I might as well. So let's get a bit more green here. Oh yeah, 100%. 100%. Yeah, I would definitely kind of creep up on those darks a bit with watercolor. I mean, at a certain point, I always just kind of go for it and just lay down some darks. Because I don't like having to hold my vision for the final result in my head for too long without seeing it on the canvas or the paper or whatever. Like, yeah, there are certain areas where I'm gonna exercise restraint, but a lot of times I at least want to get the lighting key in there fairly soon. Of course, what soon is sort of depends on the medium, right? It might be hours in oils. But just getting a sense of if it's high key, low key, lighting, medium, whatever. So just getting my darkest darks in there. Lightest lights, not really going to happen until the end. For the most part, right? Because you're talking about highlights, usually. Different with watercolor, of course. You're starting from the lightest lights since you can't go back. Of course, that's why I always cheat and I use gouache as well. Because I love mixing the two. That makes sense. I like that. And I do love watercolor. Joseph Buckvich is like one of my absolute favorite painters. Let's see here. And of course I haven't touched the white yet either. But we're not there yet. We're still in the darks, so there's kind of no reason to get opaque with anything yet. Andrew Pitt. Oh, I know that name. Yeah, I know. Shit. I know the name. I would have to look him up again. Of course, I say it's not time for any white, but the reality is, it kind of is. A little bit. Only because that olive green is so dark. But a little bit of white and I can, go thin with it at this point. So it doesn't go too opaque, but I wanted to get the cooler colors in the hair, cooler temperatures for some separation. I'd kind of started using this palette because, when you paint digital, you can get so much mileage without even shifting the hue slider, right? Just sitting in that color square and just playing with saturation and value. And so that's where I kind of decided on this red, green, and white palette, essentially. In this case, yeah, I also added the transparent yellow oxide, but just with the red and green being complements, so I can use the green just to augment saturation, you know, in the warms. And then of course white for value. But it, you know, I was just kind of surprised just how much mileage I could get out of essentially one color. It's a fun way to work. And forces you to kind of dial your focus in a bit more and not go too all over the place with, you know, with colors and whatnot. And yeah, limited palette in general, I think, is just a great way to work. You know, even if you're not just doing studies, like for final sort of pieces, I actually prefer working with a limited palette. I just find it extends my understanding of color every time, you know, just squeezing every ounce of of variety out of it that I can. Just got that red chin. Let's get that in there. I probably should have. So I've got titanium zinc white here, which, yo, Oz, what's up, dude? How you doing? I am back from vacation. I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Yeah, I should have put, so I'm using titanium zinc white here, which, if you think about opacity from 1 to 10, 10 being opaque, titanium white is a 10. This is about a 7. And zinc white is about a 3. I love using zinc white for skin tones. It just has a lovely translucency to it. But you don't want to use it super heavy because it's very brittle. So it's prone to cracking if you use it too heavy. But I kind of feel like for this, maybe I should have put the zinc white out, but it's okay. I like the control that I have just due to its transparency. Whereas like titanium white, you add just the littlest bit in there, and it's just like too much. Yeah, Oz, I'm doing well. You know, work's a little hectic, and which is never a bad thing. But I've been waking up early lately just to paint, and it's been amazing for my overall mental health. Because I found if I tried to wait to get painting done after work, it's like sometimes if it was a crazy day, I just didn't have the energy, and so it wouldn't always happen. But since I started waking up early, it's like I can consistently get a good like 2 to 3 hours of painting in the morning before work, and it makes me very happy. I know that's kind of why I was like, you know what? I miss streaming. I miss like hanging out virtually with folks and chatting and talking art. Even though obviously with my team, like we kind of chat and talk art all the time, but you know, it's different. It's different. There's also work stuff going on. All right, let's break into this transparent yellow. Let's knock some of these lights down a little bit, because too light. I'm working much drier than I normally do, because I feel like I tend to be a little too much of a loose cannon when it comes to the medium sometimes. So I'm trying to do better. Yes, the strikes are affecting our whole industry pretty heavily. It looks like there's at least a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. So that's nice. But yes, it's been a thing. And not necessarily fun, which is why I'm always happy when some stuff comes in that demands a ton of focus, because at least like that distracts me from the not fun realities of some of this shit. Then I'll paint some more lights back in to some of this. Although honestly, some of these are probably the right value, but not the right temperature. So let's just knock some of this stuff down. There's some really nice warms in here that I want to get, but they're not going to pop unless I get the proper cooler temperatures in there. So oh, the Barbie movie. Yeah, we did a bunch of stuff on that ad campaign. Although we didn't really sketch on it. So, yeah, on the sketch side we didn't. But as an agency, we did a lot of stuff. I think I gotta get some of these darker. Because these midtones are going pretty dark. Let's do that real quick so that he doesn't have to look so messy for too long. It's always a pain, like just setting stuff up, and every painting goes through an ugly phase, and we're deep in it right now. So let's get our darks in here. So that we can gotta be able to accurately gauge this stuff. I know. Every painting, right? And you just gotta muscle through it. At least, saving grace is you do enough of them and you understand that, and it's not a big deal. The main key is never step away from your painting during the ugly phase, right? If it's a large painting, obviously you might not be able to get the whole thing out in one sitting, but at least if you can get part of it out so that you have a goal for the rest. Kind of like in writing, right? You never want to walk away if you don't know what happens next. Yeah, I've made the mistake of putting paintings down during the ugly phase, thinking like, oh, let me just think this through and I'll come back to it. I'll figure it out and come back to it. And holy crap, it would sometimes take months just to want to come back to it, because every time I looked at it, I just wanted to burn the thing. Like, no. So I don't do that anymore. That's helping. That is helping. But I gotta fix that. All this ugly scumbling. We'll get to it. We will get to it. He's got a wig on, so I'm not going for a natural hairline here. Normally with a natural hairline, you would always make it soft in that transition. Otherwise, it'll look like a wig. There we go. The only thing with working on my larger paintings on streams, I'm not entirely sure how I would handle that. If I would just zoom out and have the whole thing on screen, but then if I'm working on a small area, like, you wouldn't really be able to see it. So that would be a bit of a challenge to figure out. But maybe if I'm in a portion of it where I know I'm just going to be kind of camping out there for a bit, then I could just zoom in on that. All right, let's figure this out. I don't like it. Now I think we need a bit more opacity because it's really just the transparency that's kind of messing with it a little too much. So transparent yellow. Yeah, it's a tricky one because it's also a matter of like, where can I actually set up my camera? And with the bigger one, which you can just catch a glimpse of right back here, but it's 34 by 55 inches, so it's a big piece, which I mean would look pretty rad because it would fit really nicely in that 16 by 9 area, but again, if I'm working on a face, then that face would be really tiny on screen. Oh, Oz, trust me, I have no issues getting rid of the face cam. I just know for streaming people like to see it, but the reality is if I'm working on my bigger paintings, I wouldn't be able to position the camera anywhere that you could see my face because that painting would be blocking everything. So there we go. I think the midtones might need to go darker still, which is fine. It's a little easier than having to go lighter. Because this is about right for at least the lights in his face, right? Like I said, it's a very limited value shot, which is kind of what drew me to it. I've been thinking a lot in painting about just bracketing my lights more. There's a tendency, especially coming from like illustration and any kind of concept art stuff, there's this tendency to just kind of over dramatize the lighting, and so then you get into like full highlights on most of the things, and all these speculars and shit like that. And I've noticed that the paintings that are the most compelling to me use a ton of restraint. So I'm really trying to keep that in mind as much as I can. Even if I end up doing something that's much more dramatic, like for work, obviously for key art, for doc and movie posters or video game covers, like you need that drama, right? But I just want to make sure that I am fully aware of it as I'm painting it. So in my own stuff, trying to exercise as much restraint in the lighting as I can. Just so I'm very clear on the differences. Oh yeah, his nose needs to go darker. All right, let's hit these midtones because these lights are gonna look funky as fuck if we don't. And there's some shadows in here happening that I need to, not shadows, but you know, midtones and dark midtones. Anyone who has watched my previous streams knows that I'm a big fan of always paying attention to the 5 lights, right? Light, midtone, dark, reflected light, and accents, which is highlights and dark accents. So you always want to know which one you're painting in, because that will kind of determine where it needs to go in the value scale. Darker or lighter. Right? Reflected lights are never going to be as light as the lights, right? Now it's different if you're getting into a photo setup where you actually have fill lights, not necessarily reflected lights. That's a different scenario. I try and stay away from some of that stuff as much as I can. No, so we didn't visit the castle, but I did see the Rembrandt self-portrait in the gallery. So one of my main reasons for wanting to go to Edinburgh was to see Sargent's painting of Lady Agnew of Lochnaw. It's like one of my all-time favorite paintings of his. And it's not on display right now. Urgh. Oh man, I was so bummed. They're like packing her up to go on the road, I guess. Oh man, I was disappointed. I was looking forward to that painting so much. But yeah, so you know, Rembrandt, very much like Brown school of painting, which I totally vibe with. I almost always start with earth tones, even if I'm gonna end up going very cool on a painting. I almost always start with earth tones. Makes me happy. I know, so but the thing is, like, they couldn't even tell me how long she was going to be on the road. They didn't know. Honestly, though, I'd rather spend more time in the Highlands. Edinburgh is fine, but my feeling is the tendency of cities is to kind of always be looking forward, right? You have a lot more just modernist thought happening in cities, and people are, you know, of course they want a certain lifestyle. That's why they move to the cities. And so there's a lot of looking forward. It's like, I mean, it's a beautiful city, you know, but there's a similarity to a lot of the medieval cities around Europe. Now, also, the other side, though, is that you have this month of festivals happening, so it's a very different feeling, I think, than if we had gone, like, let's say, in September, right? You've got Fringe, you've got the music festivals, you've got book festival, film festival, and a couple of other things happening. And so it was just packed. It was, and when you get a city packed with tourists, it feels more touristy, right? Than if you were there. Like I said, even going next month would have been a very different scenario. But for me, I really want to go back to the Highlands. I fell in love with the Highlands. There we go. Getting a little bit of... So maybe we will go just a little lighter in the lights in some areas. So let's get that nose. Let's get that nose working. Midtones are all, well, non-existent there. Yeah, I do. I really want to check out the West Coast. There we go. I think I might just block in, like overpaint on the some of these midtones, and then lay some lights over the top. At a certain point, I don't like to have to paint around things, it just never results in something good. Unless, okay, that's not true. If you're going for a certain look where it is very kind of shape oriented, then it's fine. But that's not what I'm going for. So let's not do it. I definitely need to get some lights in there, though. It's sinking in a little bit, so the lights are a little darker, and it just looks weird. It's like all the same value now. So we're losing our design. Losing our design. We need some darker darks and some lighter lights. And in that scenario, when I need both darker darks and lighter lights, I always start first in the darks, because the darks, as Harvey Dunn said, although I think he was quoting Howard Pyle, the darks carry the drawing and the lights carry the color, right? And by drawing, we're really talking about structure. So, which is why I will always start with the darks if I need to kind of hit both areas, because the darks will just help me reinforce the structure. Makes everything else go faster. Let's get that red in. a decenter place. We'll pretend that's a word. Let's hit these lights. Lights. Might bring a little more of the yellow in. You know, I haven't really used the transparent yellow iron oxide that much, so I'm kind of also learning a bit about the color right now. It's weaker than I expected when compared to like the transparent red iron oxides, which are pretty potent. I'm a little surprised at how weak the yellow is, but it's fine. Just means you gotta use a bit more of it. Likewise, this olive green is a little weaker than I remember, because I haven't been using it much lately. For some reason, I remember it being a lot stronger, but apparently I'm misremembering. Yeah, I mean, this is Old Holland, so, you know, technically it should have a lot of pigment. But also I'm used to this Indian yellow that's usually my yellow, and Indian yellow is so potent, and I love it, because a little bit just goes so far, and it works great at low value and super high value, which is why I tend to use it. But in this particular case, it would kind of throw everything off. I don't need anything that yellow for this. And I was kind of oscillating between the transparent yellow iron oxide and like a yellow ochre light. But I was like, no, let's use this. I want to kind of figure this color out a little bit. I think the only time I used it previous to this was when I it might be a little too it was just laying down a mid-ground, you know, on a previous painting, and that was it. But because I was laying it directly over white, I guess I thought it was stronger than it actually is. I mean, it makes sense that it's not the same as the red or brown transparent oxides. It's a different pigment. Whereas the red and the brown use the same pigment, it's just different potency, I imagine. I think they're both the PR101 synthetic pigment, and this one is PY42. So makes sense it wouldn't act the same. But I'm gonna have to mess with my lighting in the future a bit. It's a little catching a little more glare than I would like. It's interesting to look at the pigments, because you'll find certain ones that are essentially a mix of two pigments, right? Like the olive green is basically just a mix of ivory black and Indian yellow. The Winsor Newton and M. Graham. And I like theirs because they do a transparent dark olive green, which I really love. A lot of other companies do a more kind of opaque olive green, and it's not as versatile in my opinion. I really use olive green mostly as a modifier. rather than an actual color. So that's why I prefer the transparent one, because it isn't gonna mess with my opacity, and it's more versatile because I can use it in the lights and the darks. Since I try and keep my darks a little more transparent. Sneaking up on these lights a little bit. I have the tendency to go too light too fast, and I'm always trying these days not to do that. So I make it a point usually to, if I feel like something needs to be lighter, it needs to feel lighter. These days I make it a point to see if I can get there by making things around it darker first, rather than just saying, oh, it needs to be lighter, it needs to be lighter, it needs to be lighter, and then like before I know it, everything's just pasty and chalky and blown out. I don't want that. No. I wasn't really shopping for art supplies. I probably did more shopping for scotch. No, I have plenty of art supplies. And to be honest, like, Winsor Newton is not my favorite. I think they used to be, paint-wise, I think they used to be a little better than they are now. I tend to prefer ones that are a little higher pigment content, so like Williamsburg and Old Holland. They're not cheap by any stretch, but the quality is pretty night and day, with the exception of olive green. Neither one of those companies make an olive green that I like. So that's where I will stick with Winsor Newton or M. Graham. I like M. Graham a lot because they're all walnut oil based, which I think is kind of fun. Different, it's thinner, right? Walnut oil doesn't grip like linseed oil does, which is why they tend to use linseed oil as a binder more than walnut oil. But I paint a lot with walnut oil, so I don't know, it's kind of fun to sort of have the paints be walnut oil based as a binder. I do love for watercolor, the Winsor Newton Series 7 brushes. Fantastic. And I didn't know that they're still handmade, that the Series 7 brushes are still made by hand. Same way they always were, which I think is pretty rad. Although these days I've found myself using like calligraphy brushes more often to paint with when it comes to watercolor. I mean, it's hard to argue, right, with the people that like invented watercolor. It makes sense that their brushes might be the best ones to use for it. But I like the calligraphy brushes because they're super versatile. They can get this really fine point for detail, and then they hold enough water to just cover big broad areas if you want. And I like that you can like splay them out and they'll hold their shape for a nice kind of a rake sort of mark. So yeah, I know. I always battle with that. And I know a lot of people will say, oh, a good painter can use any brush. And yes, but I have to say, it's pretty night and day with just the feel, the spring of it. Yeah, just, I mean, the difference. I mean, I'm using I was going to say I'm using a synthetic brush right now. I'm not using a synthetic brush right now. But I usually do. But this at least was, this is from Rosemary and Company based in England. She had picked up, it was basically a big stockpile of mongoose, right? So they were going to just get rid of it because it was after using mongoose became outlawed, right? So they were basically just going to burn it. So she actually, I had picked up this big stockpile of mongoose for I don't even know when. It was like in the 90s. And she just recently ran out of it. So no more mongoose brushes. Which on one hand, I'm like, cool, totally fine. On the other hand, I'm like, I love these brushes so much. I'm going to be bummed when I eventually mess them up. But she does make some very nice synthetic mongoose brushes. Not quite the same. The spring in them feels very different, but I still love those brushes as well. So I can use them guilt-free. And most of my brushes are those synthetics. So yeah, I don't know if I've used like synthetic squirrel. The nice thing, at least with watercolor brushes, is that if you take care of them, they'll last you your entire life. So, you know, there's at least a little bit of I don't want to say guilt-free, but you know, you don't have to feel as guilty. Like I wouldn't use natural hair brushes for acrylic because acrylic just chews through brushes way too fast. So for acrylics, I'm like, nope, cheap synthetic. I'm fine with that. I don't need anything nice. But for watercolor, like, yeah, just take care of your brushes. Don't let paint dry in them and stuff. They'll last your whole life. So like, just, one brush will go a long, long way. Shit, I'm gonna have to wrap this up soon. Let's see where to get some some lights, and I want to address his eye real quick. I haven't really touched it. Few things I want to address here, but I think I can do them fairly quick. Since, you know, I'm not trying to like render the hell out of anything. When I was like kind of prepping my setup last night, there were so many things I just had to try and remember. I'm like, wait, how did I used to do this? What was the setup I used to have? Because my setup has changed so much to be just a lot more work oriented. It's not like the pandemic when I was streaming regularly and you know, my camera setup was really based around that. Now it's based more around Zoom meetings and all that, so shape of his eyebrow is off. A little more of a droop to it. Oh yeah, because I mean on the minis, right? It's all acrylic. Although you can paint them in oils if you want, but I have some figures that I really want to paint at some point. It's just hard, like when it comes to my limited time. Most of the time I'd rather work on oil painting than painting up these figures, but I really want to paint the figures. Otherwise, what did I buy them for? They're larger scale. They're not minis. But I'll probably use oils on those. Watercolor would be fun. I'd have to see if they... I guess it's an acrylic-based primer, so the watercolor would probably sit on it. But I didn't do a white primer, so watercolor would get a little funky in this case. But I'm just kind of envisioning the look that you could get with that. Because I actually want them to look more like a three-dimensional painting. You know, I'm not trying to like render them and paint them in the typical style. Like I want some underpainting to show through, and I want brush marks and all that stuff. So one of these days I will get to them. Catching all this glare. Should have thought that through a little more. Let's get some little more opaque in the midtones. get that eye, which is actually very, very cool. So let's see if we can get that going. Eventually. Eventually. I think the other thing that I tend to battle with a little bit is that I tend to go too sharp with a lot of my edges too quickly, and it's kind of because I come more from a drawing background, so there are these kind of natural tendencies I have to sort of get a little drawy, a little draftsman-y with things sometimes. And I'm really, I want to try and focus a bit more on like keeping as many edges soft as I can for as long as I can before choosing where to get some hard, crisp edges. Didn't really happen in this one because I kind of just charged forward and forgot about it. That's okay. Let's lose some edges. We don't need some of these edges. Let him sit in this environment a little more. Let me see. I feel like what I'm seeing on camera is a little different. Other way. Yeah, he's also catching glare. Hang on. See if I can knock this glare down a little bit. That's a little better. Of course, maybe not for my angle, but still better. Better. I'm not really gonna be able to like get him to a finished place. Right now, but let me at least correct correct some of these shapes. And I suppose I shouldn't necessarily expect to, get a painting finished in like 2 hours, but delusions of grandeur. It's okay. And what I should do, I should get that little specular in his eye. That'll kind of like help key the rest of this stuff a little more clearly. Thank you. Pleasantly distracting audience. Don't live stream if you're trying to get some serious stuff done. And honestly, I went into this one kind of like, we'll see where it goes. It wasn't really about getting anything finished. There is technically candlelight, which I would have loved to get some candles in there, but I opted for doing a portrait orientation. I almost went horizontal, but it's like, no, let's just worry about getting him in here. Let's not worry about trying to get any environment spelled out too. That would be a tall order. But let's I need to do a little smaller brush for a hot minute. Yeah, light is coming from the left, but it's almost like I'm technically the brightest light is coming from overhead, probably like a skylight type of thing or a high window. And then there's probably just soft candlelight inside, which is barely sort of lighting him. I'm debating if I want to paint the his eyes. His eyes are too sharp. I don't like painting eyes that sharp. This might not be the right brush to soften edges, but we can try. There we go. Yeah, I'm debating. Yeah, maybe we can paint the light on his hair, get it more opaque, because it is pretty. It's pretty bright. Might solidify this form a little more too, rather than keeping it all transparent. I don't like to really like detail out hair that much, to be honest. I prefer to keep it as kind of a soft mass just for framing the face. Just a personal preference. I'm never trying to like render the hell out of hair. Unless it's like a digital piece, then sometimes I will get into all the little flyaways and stuff. But for traditional, I like using it as a framing device. All right, let's get that. Is this the right brush for it? We'll see. Let's hope, and let's try not to fuck it up. Might not be. I want to get that specular highlight in his eye, but it is a tiny little point of light, and you kind of only have like one shot. So let's do this. Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's probably, I think I went a little cooler. I'm looking at the reference, and I think the light is a little more toward yellow than what I did. But also, I know that in post-production, they would have done so much color grading on it that, because even the candles that are in the shot are very cool. So, like, they're not a hot yellow or anything like that. They're just very, very cool. Whew. We did it. We did it. We did it. Lighter in the eye there. I love this little brush for like, I don't know, kind of creating some texture and stuff in the marks. A nice little synthetic. As we were talking about, synthetic mongoose from Rosemary. Okay, let's see if we can warm up some of those tones just a little. Since I know I can get those colors with this palette, I figure, hey, let's at least get a little closer. I'm not really concerned with matching it perfectly, but a little bit of color matching exercise is always a good thing. So let's do it. But I think the more upward facing planes around here and right here are probably catching a little bit of ambient light from whatever is above him. So I think they do still kind of stay a little cool, but these definitely went too cool. So let's see if we can't warm some of these up a little bit. A little bit of color correction. Yeah, most cinematic things, for whatever reason, they tend to color grade very cool. Um, Almost always. Um, like it's always shifted way toward the blue range. Um, which is kind of part of the cinematic look at this point. I'm not sure. I'm sure there's like a flat out reason, but for all I know, it's simply because one particular filmmaker did it that way, and the look was just a smash hit. So then everyone did it that way. Like it could be that simple, or there could be some more in-depth psychological reason for it. But almost all films, unless they specifically choose to go the other way, almost all films tend to be color graded cool. So like even if you have an iPhone that has cinematic mode on it, that's one of the things it does, is it just automatically color grades cool. And it looks more cinematic. Like it's just, we're so used to seeing things that way that we don't even question it in films, you know, except some people who are very aware of it, who just like to be contrary. Like, why do they always do that? I don't know, it looks cool, looks good. We're getting to a better place here. He does have a slight specular in that eye too, but it's much less. So I don't want to overdo that. Too dark. A little too dark. Sometimes you have to take into account painting wet into wet, and that when you're laying down a tiny little mark, it might mix in with the slightly darker paint under it. Ah, shit, that's too much. Too much. Let's get that eyelid overhanging a bit more. I feel like his eye got a little too big, like wide open kind of, so I wanna and actually let's darken that iris. How much time do I have? Oh, Shit. Well, I gotta wrap it up here pretty quick. Let's get... Because that iris is dark. I think he has blue eyes, so in the low light they're very dark. Yeah, next time I'm definitely going to try and keep my edges softer for longer. For now, let's get a little bit done in here real quick, and then I'll probably have to call it. Scarf, let's see, that actually can go a little more green and yellow. Might be, we'll see. Might be a little too light. No, that's good. Bird. So I think I just need to warm up his neck a little bit, is what it is. Yeah, you too. Thanks for keeping me company. Talking Scotland with me. I definitely would like to make this a more regular thing. I'm just not gonna commit to a schedule or anything just yet, but keep an eye out. Faux show. Maybe at a certain point I'll commit to something a little more regular, but for now I don't want it. Couple of things, and then we are calling it. Thank you. Yeah, honestly, it's been something I've been thinking about for quite a while. I think that's why last night I was like, you know what? Let's just do it. I'll set it up now so that I don't have to deal with the pain in the ass in the morning, and in which case I knew I would totally talk myself out of it. So. The danger with that, though, sometimes, is that you'll set it all up, and then the next day you don't feel like painting what you set up the night before. But today, I was like, no, still like it. I've been wanting to paint this guy for a while, so still vibing. Dark, couple of accents here. It's a thing, obviously you could keep noodling and noodling and noodling, but gotta, gotta get to work. All right. Let's see here. If I can catch it without a glare. Sorry, I might have to block the camera here for a sec. Not terrible. Some of these shapes are not right. Sometimes I don't mind, I don't really care always if the shapes are a little off, but sometimes some people just have like very particular shapes, and you want to get them right if your goal is to kind of get the likeness. I mean, it still looks like him, but it could look a little more like him, to be honest. Monsieur Raymond. All right, I gotta call it. I'll just keep noodling. You're like, no, but this and this and this. 2 more minutes. All right. Good enough. All right, my friends. I appreciate y'all hanging. Let's do it again soon. Every time. I always have to start my goodbyes like 10 minutes early. But at least this stuff is just like laying marks down on top, right? It's not anything crazy. All right, we're done. All right, friends, gotta call it. Thanks for hanging out. We'll do this again soon for sure. Maybe this weekend I'll look at streaming the process on one of my larger pieces. I think that'd be fun. So, keep y'all posted, and I'll see you next time. You have a great day as well. I'm just looking at how it is on stream. Yeah, it works. All right, friends. Peace.